Section 3 of A Daughter of the Sioux. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Shirley Anderson. A Daughter of the Sioux by General Charles King. Chapter 3. A Night Encounter. Comforted by abundant food, refreshed and stimulated by more than 2 or 3 enthusiastic toasts to the health of the major the men so loved, Trooper Kennedy, like a born dragoon and son of the old sod, bethought him of the gallant bay that had borne him bravely and with hardly a halt all the way from Beecher to Frayne. The field telegraph had indeed been stretched, but it afforded more fun for the Sioux than aid to the outlying posts on the Powder and Little Horn, for it was down 10 days out of 12. Plodder, lieutenant colonel of infantry commanding at Beecher, had been badly worried by the ugly demonstrations of the Indians for 10 days past. He was forever seeing in his mind's eye the hideous details of the massacre at Fort Phil Kearny, a few miles further on around the shoulder of the mountains, planned and carried out by Red Cloud with such dreadful success in '67. Plodder had strong men at his back, whom even hordes of painted Sioux could never stampede, but they were few in number, and there were those ever-present, helpless, dependent women and children. His call for aid was natural enough, and his choice of Kennedy, daring, dashing lad who had learned to ride in Galway, was the best that could be made. No peril could daunt the light-hearted fellow, already proud wearer of the Medal of Honor, but, duty done, it was Kennedy's creed that the soldier merited reward and relaxation. If he went to bed at F Troop's barracks, there would be no more cakes and ale, no more of the major's good grub and rye. If he went down to look after the gallant steed he loved, saw to it that Kilmaine was rubbed down, bedded, given abundant hay and later water, sure then, with clear conscience, he could accept the major's bid, and call again on his bedward way and toast the major to his Irish heart's and stomach's content. Full of pluck and fight and enthusiasm, and only quarter full, he would insist, of rye, was Kennedy as he strode whistling down the well-remembered road to the Flats, for he, with Captain Truscott's famous troop, had served some months at Frayne before launching forth to Indian Storyland in the shadows of the Big Horn range. Kennedy, in fact, essayed to sing when once out of earshot of the guardhouse, and singing he strolled on past the fork of the winding road where he should have turned to his right, and in the fullness of his heart went striding southward down the slope, past the once familiar haunt, the store, now dark and deserted, past the big house of the post trader, past the trader's roomy stables and corral, and so wended his moonlit way along the Rawlins trail, never noting, until he had chanted over half a mile, and most of the songs he knew, that Frayne was well behind him and the rise to the Medicine Bow in front. Then Kennedy began to laugh and call himself names, and then, as he turned about to retrace his steps by a short cut over the bottom, he was presently surprised, but in no wise disconcerted, to find himself face to face with a painted Sioux. There by the pathside, cropping the dewy grass, was the trained pony. Here, lounging by the trail, the thick black braids of his hair interlaced with beads, the quill gorget heaving at his massive throat, the heavy blanket swung negligently, gracefully about his stalwart form, his nether limbs and feet in embroidered buckskin, his long-lashed quirt in hand. Here stood, almost confronting him, as fine a specimen of the warrior of the plains as it had ever been Trooper Kennedy's lot to see, and see them he had, many a time and oft. In that incomparable tale, My Lord the Elephant, the great Mulvaney comes opportunely upon a bottle of whiskey and a goblet of water. "The first and second drink I didn't taste," said he, "being dry, but the fourth and fifth took hold, and I began to think scornful of elephants." At no time stood Kennedy in awe of a Sioux. At this time he held him only in contempt. "How, John?" said he, with an Irishman's easy insolence. "Looking for a chance to steal something, is it?" And then Kennedy was both amazed and enraptured at the prompt reply in the fervent English of the far frontier. "Go to hell, you pock-marked son of Scut! Where'd you steal your whiskey?" For 5 seconds Kennedy thought he was dreaming. Then, convinced he was awake, an Irishman scorned and insulted, he dashed in to the attack. Both fists shot out from the brawny shoulders, both missed the agile dodger, then off went the blanket, and with two lean, red, sinewy arms the Sioux had locked his foeman round, and the two were straining and swaying in a magnificent grapple. At arm's length Pat could easily have had the best of it, for the Indian never boxes, but in a bear hug and a wrestle all chances favoured the Sioux. Cursing and straining, on as even on both for a while, Connaught and wild Wyoming strove for the mastery. Whiskey is a wonderful starter, but a mighty poor stayer of a fight. Kennedy loosed his grip from time to time to batter wildly with his clinched fists at such sections of Sioux anatomy he could reach, but at range so close his blows lacked both swing and steam, and fell harmless on sinewy back and lean muscular flanks. Then he tried a Galway hitch and trip, but his lithe antagonist knew a trick worth 10 of that. Kennedy tried many a time the next day to satisfactorily account for it, but never with success. He found himself speedily on the broad of his back, gasping for breath with which to keep up his vocal defiance, staring into the glaring, vengeful black eyes of his furious and triumphant foeman. And then in one sudden awful moment he realized that the Indian was reaching for his knife. Another instant it gleamed aloft in the moonlight, and the poor lad shut his eyes against the swift and deadly blow. Curses changed to one wordless prayer to heaven for pity and help. He never saw the glittering blade go spinning through the air. Vaguely and faintly he heard a stern young voice ordering "Hold there!" then another, a silvery voice, crying something in a strange tongue, and was conscious that an unseen power had loosed the fearful grip on his throat. Next, that obedient to the same power, one he dare not question, the Indian was struggling slowly to his feet, and then for a few seconds Kennedy soared away into cloudland, knowing naught of what was going on about him. When he came to again, he heard a confused murmur of talk about him, and grew dimly aware that his late antagonist was standing over him, panting still and slightly swaying, and that an officer, a young athlete, was saying rebukeful words. Well he knew him, as what trooper of the th did not? Lieutenant Beverly Field. But seeing the reopened eyes, it was the Indian again who sought to speak. With uplifted hand he turned from the rescuer to the rescued. "You're saved this time, you cur of a Mick," were, expurgated of unprintable blasphemy, the exact words of the semi-savage lord of the frontier. "But by the God that made us both, I'll get you before another moon, dash you, and when I do I'll cut your blackguard heart and eat it." Then bounding on his pony, away he sped at mad gallop westward. For a moment no further word was spoken. The officer presently helped the soldier to his feet, and stayed him, for the latter's legs seemed wobbly. Field let his salvage get its breath before asking questions. Yet he was puzzled, for the man's face was strange to him. "Who are you?" he asked at length, "and what on earth are you doing out here in this time of night?" "Kennedy, sir. Captain Truscott's troop, at Fort Beecher. I got in with dispatches an hour ago." "What!" cried Field. "Dispatches! What did you do?" "Gave 'em to the major, sir. Beg pardon, they wasn't looking for the adjutant, sir, and Sergeant Hogan said he wasn't home." Even in the moonlight the Irishman saw the colour fade from the young officer's face. The hand that stayed him dropped nerveless. With utter consternation in his big blue eyes, Field stood for a moment, stunned and silent. Then the need of instant action spurred him. "I must go at once," he said. "You are all right now? You can get back? You've been drinking, haven't you?" "The major's health, sir. Just a sup or two." "I have no time now to listen to how you came to be out here. I'll see you by and by." But still the young officer hesitated. One hand grasped the rein of his horse. He half turned to mount, then turned again. "Kennedy," he faltered, "you'd have been a dead man if I hadn't reached you at that moment." "I know it, sir," burst in Pat impetuously. "I'll never forget it." "Hush, Kennedy. You must forget. Forget that you saw or spoke with me. Forget that you saw or heard any other soul on earth out here tonight. Can you promise?" "I'll cut my tongue out before I ever spake the word that'll harm the lieutenant, or the "Or any one he says, sir.